In an age where information is limitless, you'd think we'd be wiser, calmer, more in control of our lives. But the opposite seems to be true. Anxiety is rising, depression is common. And despite having instant access to centuries of accumulated wisdom, we still feel lost. Why? Because we've become prisoners of our own minds. We analyze, predict, calculate, and worry so much that we forget how to live. In this video, we'll explore why modern life breeds overthinking, how ancient philosophy warned us about this trap, and what it really means to quiet the noise inside your head. There's a strange irony in being human, in that the more we think, the less we actually know. It's not because thinking is bad. In fact, it's one of our greatest tools. But because we often confuse thought for truth, we obsess over hypotheticals, regret things we can't change, and try to control outcomes that will never bend to our will. This isn't a new problem. Stoics, thousands of years ago, warned against ruminatio, the constant chewing over of what could go wrong. Marcus Aurelius, arguably the most powerful man of his time, wrote in his journal, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Even surrounded by politics, war, and betrayal, he recognized that the real battlefield was within. Modern culture, however, encourages the opposite. We are taught to always optimize, to strategize, to plan every step of our career, relationships, even our self-care. The result? Our inner world becomes a spreadsheet of goals, outcomes, and anxieties. We trade peace for performance. But here's the truth. No one tells you. Clarity doesn't come from thinking more, it comes from thinking less. Not in the sense of becoming ignorant, but in learning to step outside the constant monologue in our heads. The philosopher Alan Watts compared the mind to muddy water. If you keep stirring, it stays cloudy. But if you leave it alone, it settles, and you can finally see through it. This is where Eastern philosophy becomes especially powerful. In Taoism, there's a concept called Wu Wei, translated loosely as effortless action. It's the idea that the best way to live isn't by forcing things to happen, but by aligning with the natural flow of life. A tree doesn't struggle to grow. A river doesn't need to think about its path. And yet both reach exactly where they need to go. So why don't we? Because our minds have been conditioned to seek control. We believe that if we worry enough, plan enough, think enough, we can avoid pain. But life doesn't work that way. No amount of overthinking will prevent heartbreak. No amount of planning will shield you from loss. No amount of internal noise will lead you to peace. In fact, silence often teaches more than thought ever can. The philosopher Blaise Pascal once said, "All of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone." Think about that. Our need to constantly stimulate our minds, to scroll, to check, to respond. It all comes from the fear of simply being with ourselves. But the ability to just be, without distraction, without judgment, is one of the most powerful forms of wisdom. Start by observing your thoughts instead of identifying with them. Meditation isn't about emptying the mind, it's about seeing it clearly. It's detached from the idea that every thought requires a response. You are not your fears. You are not your past. You are not even your ideas. You are the awareness behind them. Live more in your body. Feel the ground beneath your feet. Pay attention to your breath. Taste your food. Look someone in the eyes. These are not small things. These are the things that make life real. And finally, remember this. A quiet mind is not a passive one. It's a clear one. A mind that acts when it must, rests when it can, and trusts the flow of things. That kind of mind doesn't need to control life. It moves with it. Overthinking is the modern plague we call progress. But you don't need to escape to a mountaintop or delete every app on your phone. You just need to return to presence, to simplicity. The truth is that most of what you're worried about won't matter a year from now. What will matter is whether you lived with awareness, whether you found stillness in a noisy world, whether you learned to trust the silence between your thoughts more than the chaos within them. That's not ignorance, it's wisdom.